The south of France has always carried a kind of deceptive beauty. The golden coastline, the scent of salt in the air, and the hum of yachts along the harbor make it easy to forget that beneath its elegance, darkness can thrive quietly. Toulon in 1992 was no exception. A port city polished on the surface, but like most cities that deal in commerce, it hid shadows. And in those shadows, men were planning something that would shake France to its core. It began, as many great crimes do, not with chaos, but with patience, the kind of patience only obsession can sustain. The Bank of France in Toulon stood as a fortress of wealth and state authority, a building so secure that even imagining a successful robbery felt delusional. Armed guards, steel vaults, layers of security. It was meant to be impenetrable. Yet what makes a fortress weak isn't the walls or the locks or even the guards. It's the people who believe those defenses make them untouchable. I've always thought about that night, the night when the illusion of security shattered. On the morning of July 16, 1992, the bank went about its daily routine. Employees signed in, trucks rolled in and out of the compound. Armored vehicles unloaded currency meant for redistribution across the region. Everything appeared normal, and yet beneath that normality, a plan was already in motion, one that had taken years to conceive, and one that would require not brute force, but precision, nerves, and betrayal. The mastermind behind the operation was a man named Tony Mosulin, though his exact role remains debated. Some say he merely inspired the method, the concept of quiet infiltration, of turning trust into a weapon. Others claim the operation was the work of ex-military men and corrupt insiders who understood that violence was noisy, but manipulation was silent. But what we do know is this: sometime during the planning stages, someone inside the Bank of France, perhaps a trusted employee, began feeding information to a group of criminals, security details, guard rotations, vault access schedules, even the structure of the ventilation system. Every piece of information, every pattern, was mapped. And then came the most chilling detail. They discovered that every Friday, large sums of cash were stored overnight in the vault before being transported to Marseille on Saturday morning. It was, in essence, the perfect window. The bank slept while millions sat locked behind a door that theoretically no one could open. But theory means nothing when you understand human weakness. The robbers didn't storm the bank. They didn't need to. They came prepared with something far more effective. That Friday night, as the last employees left the building, one man remained inside. He was a security guard, loyal, quiet, and as it turned out, compromised. Whether it was for money, blackmail, or misplaced loyalty, he became the key to everything. He opened the gates of the unthinkable. At around 2:04 a.m., under the pale orange glow of the streetlights, a van pulled up to the rear service entrance of the Bank of France. No alarms triggered, no suspicion stirred. The guards simply buzzed them in, the sound of the gate mechanism echoing through the still night. Inside the van were three men, faces obscured by caps and gloves. Calm, almost unnervingly so. They moved with precision, not a word spoken, not a movement wasted. One carried a heavy bag filled with tools, cutting torches, lockpicks and electronic disruptors. Another carried blueprints. The third carried authority. You could tell he was the leader, the one whose presence commanded silence. What followed wasn't an explosion or chaos. It was methodical surgery. They began by cutting the phone lines. A silent operation, quick and exact. Then they disabled the internal alarm system, using a bypass device that had clearly been tested before. How they obtained the device remains one of the mysteries that still fascinates investigators to this day. Inside, the bank was a maze of marble halls and iron gates. Their target, the underground vault, a steel chamber designed to resist every kind of attack imaginable. But the robbers didn't need to break in through the front. they went underneath. It's believed they gained access through the sewer system, a network that ran directly beneath the bank. For months, they had studied it, mapping every pipe, every corner, every access hatch. When the night came, they knew exactly where to dig. It took hours, a slow, steady process of cutting through concrete, layer by layer, until they reached the vault's foundation. The sound of drilling was masked by the thick concrete walls and the hum of the city above. No one heard them, no one saw them. By dawn, they had breached the vault floor. What they found inside was staggering: 160 million francs, in clean, untraceable cash, stacks of organized, labeled, ready to be transported. Imagine that moment, the sight of so much money, that it ceases to feel real. Bundles upon bundles, stacked higher than a man's chest. To touch it, to know that every note represented a life, a transaction, a system, and now, it all belonged to them. They packed it with ruthless efficiency. No celebration, no hesitation. They worked like men who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. When they left, they sealed the hole behind them, disappearing into the tunnels like ghosts. When employees arrived at the bank that morning, they found nothing unusual at first. The vault door was intact. The alarm system showed no signs of breach. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary, until someone noticed a small pile of concrete dust near the corner of the floor. When they finally opened the vault, the silence inside was deafening. The room was nearly empty. Millions gone. I can only imagine the shock, the disbelief, the way reality must have collapsed for those who saw it first. The greatest symbol of financial security in Toulon had been violated, not by force, but by intelligence. The investigation began immediately. The French police, stunned by the precision of the crime, described it as an operation worthy of the military. Every inch of the bank was examined. The sewer system was combed through, revealing the tunnel, expertly reinforced and lined with wood, to prevent collapse. Whoever had dug it knew engineering. Soon, suspicion turned inward. The investigators knew this wasn't random. It had to be an inside job. Someone who knew the bank's layout, the security timing, even the sewer. And the more they dug, the clearer it became. The guard who had been on duty that night had vanished. His name, his address, his records, all gone. He was never seen again. Weeks passed, then months. Leads came and went. Suspects were questioned, but the money had vanished without a trace. Rumors swirled. Some said the cash was funneled into offshore accounts. Others whispered it financed criminal networks in Marseille. What was undeniable was that it was perfect. Terrifyingly perfect. The French press called it le vol du siècle, the theft of the century. And they weren't wrong. No alarms, no bodies, no gunfire, just intelligence, patience, and corruption. Sometimes I wonder what it must have felt like for them, those men walking away into the early morning light, knowing they had just humiliated one of the most secure institutions in Europe, knowing that by the time the world woke up, they would already be gone. But there's a darker side to every victory. In the years that followed, whispers emerged of betrayal within the group. Money that large doesn't stay silent forever. Men started disappearing. Others were found dead, under suspicious circumstances. The fortune that had united them began to consume them. By the late 1990s, fragments of the truth began to surface. A few low-level accomplices were caught, though most refused to speak. Some hinted at the involvement of organized crime syndicates, possibly even international ones. But the core team, the ones who dug, who planned, who executed, remained phantoms. The Bank of France tightened its security. The government introduced new measures for vault construction, surveillance, and employee vetting. Yet the shadow of Toulon never quite faded. Even today, over 3 decades later, I can still picture that vault, silent, hollow, and violate. The crime remains a symbol, not of greed alone, but of human audacity. Because when you look closely, you realize the most haunting part isn't that they got away, it's that they understood something most people never will. Every system, no matter how fortified, depends on trust, and trust can be bought, bent, or buried. I sometimes walk near that part of Toulon, where the old Bank of France building still stands. People pass by unaware of what happened beneath their feet, unaware that decades ago, men vanished into the sewers with millions, leaving nothing but questions and silence behind. And I can't help but think, somewhere maybe in a quiet corner of the world, one of them still lives. A man older now, his face weathered, his hands scarred from the tunnel work. Maybe he sits on a porch, looking out over the sea, knowing that for one night in 1992, he and his crew outsmarted an entire nation. And maybe, just maybe, he still hears the echo of that vault door in his dream. The metallic whisper of fortune being stolen from beneath the earth. The night when Toulon lost its faith in walls and locks. And the rest of us learned that sometimes, the quietest crimes are the ones that never stop echoing. Because in the end, the question remains, how do you stop a crime that leaves no trace, and men who simply vanish into the dark? Maybe you don't. Maybe you never can.